Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, wherever you happen to be right now, Christine. I'd just like to begin by pointing out that whatever the opposite of $1,000,000 is, that's how I feel right now. So if that's what I look like right now, I feel sorry for your poor eyes. I'll give you a minute to let that pun sink in. So in your last video, you discussed how much you've changed since beginning the long and rewarding experience of post-secondary education. And since change is something I both love and despise, I thought I would like to do the same thing, except that, unlike you, I'm not in university. However, lucky for the both of us, I found a document that I created in 2010 entitled Me, and is essentially a long list of facts about myself. I don't recall there ever being a purpose to creating this document, but it exists, so there's that. So I was really hoping to find something that had changed, but most of the information, unfortunately, was the same, which is slightly disappointing looking back on my 2010 self. But there was one of the more important lists that is not quite the same. That list is the list of my fears. So it reads as follows. I am afraid of boats, spiders, being forgotten, liquid medicine, dying unhappy. And I would like to be able to say that since the last 3 or 4 years since I wrote this list, that I've shortened it, that I've grabbed fear by the throat and shoved it against the wall and slapped it until I was satisfied. Or at least, kept the list the same length. But unfortunately this is not the case, and it's quite a bit longer now. A book that I recently read for the second time is this one. It's called The Fault in Our Stars and was written by John Green. Now in the first chapter of this book, when the character Augustus is asked what he fears, he answers with oblivion. This is something I've thought about a lot, especially recently, because it makes sense to fear oblivion. When people say they're afraid of death, essentially what they mean is that they're afraid of not being themselves, because that's all you know, really. And when you're not being yourself, i.e. not thinking, acting, experiencing as the conscious being you were born as, then what are you? You aren't anything, because you can't be something that isn't you. And that is scary, not being anything. Just not being. The main character, Hazel, then goes to explain that fearing oblivion is pointless, also true, because whether or not we want it to happen, it's going to happen, even though most people would be inclined to choose not. Eventually, we will be gone. Not just you and me, Christine, but everyone. Families, our friends, strangers, people who haven't even existed yet. We will all be gone. All of humanity. And as Hazel so kindly pointed out, there will be no one to remember anybody or anything that ever happened. And even though death is the only certainty in life, and there's no point in fearing it because of that, I fear oblivion anyway. The idea of not being alive is scary, and nobody knows what it's like except people who are not alive. And we can't ask them. I think the main reason I'm afraid of oblivion is because life is the only thing I have, and I would like to have it for a long time. And the fact that oblivion makes life seem nearly pointless is a very disappointing thought for me. It's like you are, upon your conception, handed the great and precious gift of consciousness. And then you realize that everything you will ever do with that gift will be eventually obliterated. It's just a bit too much for my small brain to handle. Anyway, this book was amazing. It made me cry more than I'm willing to confess, but I highly recommend it. So, Christine, as is made obvious by your last video, you've changed quite a bit since September, and according to this video, the major way I've changed in the last 4 years is that I've become more afraid. So that's great. I hope you're having a great week, Christine, and I'll see you next week. That's exciting.